So they sued me for $250,000. What is up, my friends? My name is Garrett James. All my friends call me G Money, and I want to take the time to share this little story of how I started from zero, hitting rock bottom multiple times through the journey and getting to where we are today, and how we now help many others. And this is the story how I went exactly from rock bottom to where we are today, so that you can just really have a full understanding of who I am and why I'm here spitting all this stuff at you and why you should give a shit to listen at all. So let's dive into it. I'm gonna tell you a little bit of my backstory, all the different things that I've sold over the years, and how we got to this point. But in order for you to understand how I got here, first I got to take you all the way back to the beginning and tell you about little baby G Money and how I grew to be who I am today. I actually come from a working class family, born in upstate New York, grew up basically my whole life just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. We weren't exactly poor, but we were definitely not comfortable. We lived just far enough out the hood that my parents could buy a house and feel good about it, but just close enough that all my friends that I rode the bus with and went to school with all lived down the street and did all the hood rat stuff. And so what that caused for me was the drifting into trouble as an early teen, without the lack of money and without proper, guidance or mentorship from really any men in my life. My dad was always present, but we did not have a good relationship. He had no father figure, no men in his life. So it was hard for him to be a good leader at the time of my life. And for me, I've always had so much energy and always just naturally known I was supposed to be the boss since I was 13 years old. I just knew it. And so it was very difficult for me to stay in line in regards to the rules. And that led to a lot of trouble, both in school and with the law. But because of that disconnect with my dad, I really kind of teetered on the line of good kid, bad kid. I got great grades in school, always super easy, super intelligent, but I could not stop talking. Often the class clown got into a lot of trouble because I was just so high energy. It was really hard for me to chill out, I guess. And so as I got to about probably 13 years old is when I first became obsessed with making a lot of money, mostly because my family did not have a lot. So I started walking around the neighborhood, knocking on doors and asking if I could mow their lawn. That's the first money I ever made in my life. I would push the lawnmower and the leaf blower and everything together through the neighborhood. And that's how I started making money. Since then, I learned how to take that gift of gab and all the talking I could do all day in school and my desire to make money and pair those together. That's when I started selling stuff. I was 17 years old when I started working at Finish Line. I was a sneakerologist, as they called it. We sold shoes of all kinds, mostly Nikes. That's where my passion for kicks really came from. And from that, I got a couple great mentors. Honestly, early on in my sales journey, I learned from some guys that were incredible, especially in direct-to-consumer retail sales. I learned a lot about customer interaction. And from there, moved into leadership at Dick's Sporting Goods. Again, all just retail sales driven. And then my life really shifted. I had always been overweight my whole life. And then I lost 100 pounds after graduating high school. And with that, I spent a lot of time in the gym. And then that is when I was offered a job at Gold's Gym. And this was a life-changing experience for me. Truth be told, they actually hired me and then wanted to fire me because of my criminal record. As a teenager, I had somebody there in the gym that knew me personally, was willing to go to bat for me, and he was able to bypass HR and still get me the gig. And I promised him he would never regret it and I would do nothing but crush it for him. And that's exactly what I did. I had really my best sales mentor in that role. His name is Josh Everhart. And he was the sales manager when I first got started. And then eventually he became the general manager, trained me to be his sales manager. And I just really ran with it. I was always so high energy and passionate about the gym. It was an easy thing for me to sell. I had that work ethic of just putting in the work regardless of what it takes, no matter how long. I still remember at the gym when I got my first $6,000 sales commission check as a sales manager. And I remember thinking like, wow, like this is real. More than just the money, like, yo, I'm the shit and I know about it. I'm about to make so much money. I'm going to be a billionaire. I just knew in that moment that I had this set of skills that could take me anywhere I wanted in life. And since that moment, I have sold all kinds of shit. I've sold cell phones, I've sold roofs, we've sold solar, we sold digital marketing, we sold social media marketing, like all kinds of stuff. NFTs, real estate, it doesn't matter, you name it. When you know the principles of sales, you plug it and you play it. It's a money machine. You can print money. That's why we call it the G money machine, because when you have the skills of sales and marketing, you're limitless. You can go make all the money that you want to, really, if you think about it. So because of that, pretty quickly rose to the #1 rep in the region, which reflects in leadership roles. So I moved to general manager across a couple different gyms, Gold's Gym. I eventually jumped to LA Fitness, workout anytime. I had this set of skills. I had this ability to get people to sign. Now, looking back in my life now, I can understand that a lot of that was done off of charisma and effort, right? I was not necessarily studying sales to be by the book sales expert, as much as I knew that if I picked up the phone, made calls, if I went out and shook hands, if I talked to people in the club, I could generate more opportunities to talk to people, which meant I was going to close more deals. And that's what really led into my lead generation career online. And I really learned how to maximize that skill. But before I jumped straight digital, I got offered a gig at a larger gym, 4 or 5 hours away, right outside of East Carolina University, in Greenville, North Carolina. I would have made a base of $80K and all the extra bonuses. They're painting this picture for a 23-year-old kid, and it all looked great, and I was about to take it. And then I had a moment of reflection where I'm sitting there thinking, am I going to be 40 years old trying to convince some other 22-year-old kid why he should take this job, but nobody else wanted to? And so I realized that the truth was, yes, if I stayed in that role, then I was going to end up being that guy for someone else on the road. And that scared me. And I threw it all away and ran. My parents could not wrap their head around this. I had not been living at home at the time, so I had, the independence to be able to do what I wanted, but they couldn't understand how I had the ability to make more money than my dad did at 23 years old, and I threw it all away. But I said, look, I'm great at selling stuff. There's no way this stops here. I'm just going to do it for myself. So that's when I started helping my buddy Nick. He was running a parking management company, basically throwing wheel locks on cars to keep it simple, and they were just doing it in Boone, North Carolina. He reached out to me. I'm like, dude, I can sell this. I drove all over the state of North Carolina. I walked in every college apartment that you could find across every major college campus in North Carolina. I shook hands. I smiled and brought donuts and Chick-fil-A to the girls that worked the front desk. And I signed a hell of a lot of clients for them. We took them from 1 market to 5 markets. They were expanding tremendously. I made my first $100,000, most of which was in cash because of the style of the business. I felt like I was balling, pissing money away on girls and whatever. Mostly I was training and working hard, but in my free time, I always just like to spend money. And then things started to crumble a little bit. It didn't look like it was crumbling, but I had somebody approach me, say, hey, you actually are doing this service on one of my properties, and I want to start my own business doing the same thing. I want you to run it, but you got to leave those guys. Now, keep in mind, I was not a partner at this business. I was a sales guy, essentially. I was selling, I was helping run operations, but I was not any position of power. So this guy comes and he's like, I think this will be good. And so he's like, basically pitch me on why I should invest in you instead of just doing it myself. And so I did that. And that was actually the first time I ever used my sales ability to raise capital. And his name was Joel Snyder. He was a ornery old New Yorker, just to put it slight, Yankee. And he had probably worth almost $150 million, a couple different construction companies. And I got him to invest $150K into what we were doing. And we launched our own parking company. And that's when everything looked great. And the crumble began to happen right there. So the previous company that I worked with was not so happy that me being the guy that helped them grow was now doing it for myself. They felt heat. So they sued me for $250,000. Now, I was 24 years old at the time, 23 years old at the time. I didn't have $250,000. I just made my first $100,000, just got some investment, finally looking like I'm going to skyrocket like I always knew I was supposed to. And the investor pulls out. He says, it's not worth the risk, blah, blah, blah. It all ends up falling apart. This is where I end up with nothing, dead broke. I had just grown this company from one city to five. I'd helped them make a tremendous amount of money. Felt like I was on the upswing. Everything was going great. Now here I am, dead broke, no money saved. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I burnt most of my bridges in the gym industry in the area, and I just needed to find that next step, but I knew I needed to do it for myself. And so that's when I jumped on that plane. I actually had to bum the airpoint, like frequent flyer miles from my mom to get across the country. Me and my boy Brad, we actually rented a storage unit for like 300 or 400 bucks a month, and we would take turns sleeping in there. And then I was training all the time. I quickly got a job at a gym out in LA. You know me, I can slang the shit. We would, work out, shower, eat, everything at the gym, sleep there. It took 2 weeks for me to be able to get an apartment. Actually, I guess it was almost a month technically, but we had a place to crash for a few weeks there. So almost a month there of living out of the car basically. And I was able to qualify for an apartment now that I got the gym job, and the rest was history. I got introduced to some of the local cannabis companies, being a big smoker myself. And they're like, what? You got all these followers on Instagram and you know how to do marketing? Like, help us. And so that's what I did. And I helped a couple local companies grow their, I guess, customer base, both in person and digital. Honestly, made a whole bunch of money. First time I made so much money, I didn't know what to do with it, making 50 or 60 grand a month, doing absolutely nothing. And it was great. I got to focus on fitness, and my life seemed really easy at the time. But as always, there's more still to come. And so then I ended up getting in some legal trouble. Surprise, surprise, dealing with the cannabis industry. Nothing really serious, but it caused me to have to pull out of what I was doing. And so I'm like, all right, well, let's start this digital marketing agency. And that's when we dove into Disrupt Media Group, took all the skills, the sales and marketing skills that I had acquired over the years, and just started to launch our own offers. I did 7 figures with an NFT project in the first week, and I had no idea what I was doing with NFTs. I was really good at the talking to sell, at the one to many. And so we have since launched many offers. Nowadays, what I really do is help others build the sales systems to replicate the same. We have done this in solar. We've done this in roofing. We've done this in real estate. Really anything. When you know how to sell, at the end of the day, the principles are the same, and you can plug and play across multiple industries. I have hired more than 300 setters. I've probably trained 100 plus closers across offers over the past few years. It's something I'm hyper confident in, and I absolutely love to sell. I think that there is so many secret skills buried in the psychology of sales: tonality, intention, conversation flow, the proper questions. There's so many like nuances to fine tune that it really is my equivalent of a professional sport. So this is the consolidated version of my life story and why you should give a shit when I tell you how things work when it comes to sales. We're going to do all kinds of in-depth stuff, and I'm sure we'll cover a lot of these topics that I just touched on much more in-depth soon. But I just wanted really to vibe with you guys, let you know who G Money is. My friends first called me G Money. I was probably 15 years old. I had no money in my pocket, but I was all about a dollar, and it has not changed ever since. Some of the lessons that I learned through this process are: nobody's coming to save you. You got to get up. You got to do it your damn self. It's just like fitness. Nobody's going to rescue you. You got to put in the hard work. You got to do it over and over for as long as it takes. You can't ever give up. You are 100% responsible for the outcome that you receive based off of the input that you put in. That's it. When you understand that, it means you're in control of your destiny. Another lesson I learned: skills pay the bills. Systems build wealth. You can grind and make money off of pure effort all day long. That's what I did back in the gym days. But when you master skills, that's when you really pay the bills. That's when you make the big bucks. But when you can systemize those skills, that's when you begin to scale. And that's when you move into that wealth zone. That's when you're building real value long-term, more than just the hamster wheel that most sales reps stay in. Another lesson for sure is your story is your superpower, especially with social media. When you learn how to share your story and how to get others to want to follow, engage, and listen to what you have to say, selling stuff becomes incredibly easy. You don't even have to try. When people trust you, they will buy from you. That's a lesson I've locked in for sure. Nowadays, I love to teach, coach, and guide others, especially young entrepreneurs. I did not have the mentors that I needed early on in my career, and I love to be that for many others. So it's really a passion of mine to give all of the knowledge I've accrued over the years to others so that they can become the best versions of themselves. There's going to be much more of this coming, guys. I appreciate you spending time listening to a little bit of my backstory. Can't wait to get to know each of yours as well. And I'm sure we're going to make a whole lot of money together as always, because that's what I do, guys. That's why they call me G Money, and that's why we're here together. I'll catch you on the other side.